Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for joining again and watching the videos on how to service and repair fishing reels. And today I'm going to be working on an Accurist. This is the Accurist S3. It's a low profile bait casting reel with 9 ball bearings and a 7:1 retrieve ratio, which, as you know, is very fast. We're going to show you how to take this reel apart. We'll explain how it's made. We'll show you how to service it and how to keep it running for a long time to come. This is a reel that is one of 5 reels that George brought into me, and boy, they've been mostly low profile bait casters, but a variety of them, and they're all in for service. This one is made by Quantum, and what I try to do as I service a lot of these reels is to share the service that I've performed with others so that you can learn how to do it yourself. And if you'd like to learn how to do that, well, just subscribe to my channel, because I cover all kinds of fishing reels. Today it's a freshwater bait casting or inshore ocean reel. Tomorrow it may be a big trolling reel or a spinning reel. Never know quite what's coming to the shop, and that's kind of what makes the variety fun, and it makes the learning experience broader in terms of learning about all types of fishing reels, just not one particular reel. I work on vintage, I work on the newer stuff, and everything in between. Well, we've just removed the retention cap for that handle nut, and that handle nut is a 10mm nut. It comes off in a traditional counterclockwise manner. Before you get started on removing pieces and parts, you should have a strategy for what you're going to do with those parts when you take them off. Mine is, well, I use a parts tray. This parts tray has 8 corners to it, and that suits me very well. It's the bottom of a fast food container, but what it does for me is it enables me to use those corners to organize my pieces and parts by sub-assembly, so that when I go to put the reel back together again, I know just where they are. I've seen a lot of different varieties of how to manage parts, and well, they're all going to work. You just need to find out what one works for you. I saw one that uses an egg container, and they use it sequentially as they take off the pieces and parts. They kind of put them in the order that they took them off, so that they have them there. Well, when it's time to go back and put them together, they kind of just follow the reverse order of it, and that's cool too. We took off the star adjuster, and then inside that we have this kind of a cup with a noisemaker on it, a spring, and inside that spring we have a couple of detention washers, and on the bottom of that cup you have that little washer. So if you were using that egg container, or you were laying them out on a towel, you'd do it this way. You'd put the star adjuster and then the cup with the internal components, and then this washer that goes underneath that. So whatever it is that you have, just know what you're going to use before you get started. It'll make it a lot easier on you when it's time to put them back together again. Also helps you keep track of the parts that you know that you put them in, so that they're not left behind. I noticed this one is made in China. The model is the ATG 100 HTP. Well, Accurist is going to be I'm not sure the TG or the other initials, not that important. This little switch right here is going to enable me to take off the non-gear side plate. So pull it over, push down on your cap, and then it should just pull out. In here you have the race for the clutch. You also have a bearing in there. So it's always good to test the bearing. You can do it any number of ways. I tested the reel before, so I know that I'm not hearing loud bearings, but just put a screwdriver in that inner race, turn it, make sure that it's turning and not frozen. If you need to remove this bearing, there is a 5-sided clip. I just covered it with oil. There's a 5-sided clip that needs to come out in order to pull that bearing off. I've oiled the bearings. I oil my bearings. I don't grease them. And well, we'll just put that side plate off. I like to do that because I'm never quite sure on these reels. I could find out, but I'm never quite sure on these reels whether there is a screw hiding in the back here that's holding on the side plate. In this case, we don't have one, so we can continue. If you had the screw in the side plate there, you would remove that screw first. I also like on these to keep those, keep the line tightened and put a rubber band on it so that I don't trap this line in the case when it comes time for me to reinstall. This is one of the things that happens to me a lot. That little line tag at the end there gets caught in the side case, and then you can't understand why the reel isn't turning as it should. I just keep a steady supply of rubber bands on hand, and most of them go to this use. Okay, we should be able to put that back in without worrying about that now. Okay, now we should be able to go over to the gear side of the frame. There's 1, 2, 3 screws on this side, and you might miss it. There's a very small screw on this side, so you're going to need the micro or precision screwdrivers for that. I get asked a lot. I have several versions of these. I have a kit by Milwaukee. Dick sent me a kit of Klein tools. Well, these are just convenient right now, so I just grabbed these, but I appreciate Dick and everybody's support. And if you're wondering, if you're building a little tool cabinet for frequently used fishing reel tools, if you're thinking about doing this a lot, then the precision screwdrivers or the micro screwdrivers are going to come in handy. Everything from these small little kits that are not very expensive at all, and you can find in dollar stores, up to, well, high-priced kits, depending on what it is. But in fishing reel repair, there's not anything that really requires the ultimate expensive toolkit for this. You can pretty much use, as I mentioned, dollar store varieties, Harbor Freight varieties. It's not critical. When I take the screws out, I'm putting them into my parts tray, but I'm checking while I'm doing that because I want to make sure that if there's a smaller screw or a longer screw, thicker screw or thinner screw, whatever, that the part for that is identified. So those 3 screws are all the same, and I know the one on the back here is smaller, and I did pull out the small screwdriver for that one. Again, you could miss this one, it's that small. And if you missed it, you'd be trying to pull this case off without much luck. And, well, you might break something. You can see how small that screw is by comparison. All right, that goes in the case. And we should be able to remove this case. Now, sometimes I've had trouble with these Accurists in that it pulls this flipper switch out for whatever reason. It tends to get stuck. Let's see if we have any better luck with this right now. Well, as generally happens with this, I've lost the spring has come out. But we'll show you how to put that back together again. For whatever reason, and this is the reason right here, this pinion gear gets stuck a lot. It causes it. Well, we'll have the opportunity to show you. These pieces fell out as I was pulling the case. I'll show you how to put these back together again. So what happens if you don't know a reel like this and you're trying to do just that? You're trying to service this reel, and all of a sudden it explodes. What's your answer short of running to YouTube? Well, your answer essentially is to go to the schematic diagram and check the orientation of the pieces and parts, where they are on there, and well, how to put them back together in sequence. I always advise take pictures. Pictures are a great way to help you to see the orientation of the parts you're removing, and of course serve as a reference point when it's time to put them back together again. Well, this is unfortunate that we had the explosion, but maybe fortunate in terms of showing you the service on that. So if you do have trouble, I just kept wiggling the side plate. That's all there is to it. There's nothing that's holding anything there to speak of. But if it's you have the misfortune of having that come apart, just go to the schematic reels. They will help you. I want to check to see. It says 9-ball bearings. There might be a bearing under this gear shaft here, so I'm going to just take a moment here to remove these two screws before we go much further. And we'll check. So most of the work behind servicing a fishing reel involves inspecting the pieces and parts, cleaning them, replacing any worn pieces and parts, and reinstalling after lubrication. Alright, I've taken the two of those off. Take a picture. You're going to notice that this clamp underneath here for the gear shaft is different. And yep, we have a bearing under there. So same idea. Test it, make sure that it's working. I'm going to oil this. I'm going to set that to the side. I've got one more thing to do with this frame before I go much further, and that is to service the line guide pawl. In order to service that line guide pole, you need to remove the front bezel. That's this little green piece here, because you can't get to that cap easily without removing this. You can get to it, but it's just as easy to take this off. Again, keep an eye on those pieces and parts on your paper towel there. I usually put them into a parts tray, but because all of those came out at once, I'm just going to be brief about it and leave them right there. I've removed the screw from each side, pull it straight out. You need to pull this down as well, your little switch there. That's a spring-loaded switch. So be careful with it as you remove it. Set that to the side for a moment, and here's your line guide pawl and your line guide. Use the appropriate screwdriver. You need a big broad blade for this. This will give you access to your pawl. This looks like a it might be a ceramic pawl. I think this is it's either plastic or ceramic. I think this one's plastic. Interesting. Okay, clean the shoulders on that. Make sure that they're clean. Check the points on that. These are fine. I notice that there's a little grease on the worm gear, so I'm just going to use a paper towel. Wipe that grease down, rotate it, and just do that until we get the old grease off of there. I prefer not to grease worm gears because they attract and hold dirt, but that's your choice. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to rotate that. That's going to rotate the worm gear, allow me to mop that up. Before I go any further, I will oil that. Okay. To reinstall, you bring your pawl back in. Best thing to do here is to hold pressure on the pawl and turn to make sure that it seats properly. And we can bring our cap back on. That's a plastic cap, so be careful with this. You need to do two things. You need to make sure that you are threading it properly and that you're not over tightening it. You break the plastic cap, well, it's just problematic for everyone. So just make sure it seats. You don't need to go any further than that. Okay, this comes in now. There's a little steel rod here. It needs to seat. That's the top guide. And we can bring our assembly here with that little click lever. Bring it in. Then you're going to reverse this now. You're going to pull this all the way in so you can get the clearance. And it will snap into place. Take your two small screws that you have and put those back in. Those of you that watch the channel know me and small screws. Generally, we don't play well together. Big hands and small screws don't normally do well. We've explored some of the alternatives for that, but right now I'm actually in pretty good condition with this one, so we're going to just keep on moving along here. We've oiled the back of that bearing underneath the gear shaft. Remember what we said, there's a wide side and a thin side. The wide side is going to go into the carrier side here. Seat that down. We'll do the same thing here with the 2 screws we took off earlier. And we'll show you the rest of the service. So, clean, inspect, re-lube, take it fishing. That's kind of what the notion is about with reel repair and service. Now, fortunately, if you need parts for these, they're available, but a lot of the parts that you might need for a quantum spinning reel are hard to find, if not impossible to get. Those seem to be more of a disposable product. Quantum goes across all kinds of lines in terms of fishing reels, and a lot of them don't have parts support, but the bait casters do. Alright, we've wiped off our pinion gear. We're checking the teeth, make sure that they're uniform and clean, and make sure that all those little valleys in the teeth are clean. You can go ahead and put some grease onto this as the next step. Alright, on your yoke, there's going to be a side that has ramps. I can see it here. It says a slanted side. That's going to face in, as are the slots on your pinion gear. That's going to go over these 2 posts. This is your trip mechanism. It's clean. We're going to oil that. Your plastic gears here for the drives do not require any grease. Plastic by themselves is kind of self-lubricating. It's a petroleum product. The other thing about this is these are fail-safes. A lot of times folks say, why do they make them plastic? Why don't they make them metal? Well, for 2 things. If you get hung up and you try to winch your way out of it, the plastic is going to give, so it's a fail-safe. If you had metal, you could risk destroying a lot of your reel. Next piece in is this click ratchet. When you go to free spool, you're going to push down on this thumb button here. That's going to pull this out to allow this spool to spin freely, and it's going to hook in here on that ratchet. That ratchet is going to throw it back up when you turn, so this will pop back up that way when you turn. That's your free spool release mechanism there. Okay, let's check this out on the washers. The washers are usually a carbon fiber type of a washer. The back end is a hard washer here. You don't do anything but make sure it's clean. That goes over the click ratchet that we just installed. You want to do the same thing with your main gear that we did with the pinion gear. I'm going to push out, or let drop out the drag stack. The drags are available for the reel if you need to replace them. Go ahead and do that. Same thing, take a look, make sure as you inspect that these are clean. Here's a thing you can use to clean them up if you find dirt and debris in there. I'm not seeing any dirt and debris in here. This is an example, but this reel is very clean in that regard. All right, and then you want to re-lubricate that with fishing reel grease. Now I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease. It's a fishing reel grease, and I encourage you to only use fishing reel greases. Quantum makes hot sources and other things, their own greases if you want. You don't have a grease, go to the internet and go get the Quantum if you prefer the Quantum. But overall, it's just recommended that you use grease. Okay, here's your drag stack in opposite orders. There's a plate that goes in first. There's a wide washer. It'll sit under that plate. So 3 washers. And a cap washer up top here. All right, let's put these in. First one you want to put in is the wide one. Oops, I put the plate in. Silly me. The 4-pronged plate goes in first. Then the wide washer, because there's a rise here in the main gear. You need that wider washer so that you don't have it pressed up against that. Next one up would be the metal keyed washer. These alternate. Wide washer again. Plate, second of the geared washers with the 4 studs. Make sure they sit into the cavities in the main gear. The last one is the one with the small hole in it. You don't want to put a wide one up here because it's going to float, and you have a reduced cap here on top. It's a smaller cap, so make sure that you have that one there. And then the cap has the sleeve that's the inner clutch for your anti-reverse bearing. Okay, a little dirty on that side. You want to make sure these stay clean here. All right, now let's show you that bugaboo that always seems to happen here. This toggle switch comes out all the time. I don't know why that is. It's probably me, an operator error, but I've become quite the person in understanding how that works now. There's a hole in the release arm right here. That's where one side of the tag is going to go. There's 2 sides. One is a shorter side. The shorter side goes in that tag hole there. There's a corresponding hole in the bottom of this one right there. It might be hard to see, but it's there. And generally speaking, what I will do is tilt the reel this way so that the spring comes over. It's a hard one to see, so make sure that you get that in properly. Find the plastic stud on the case, and then you need to rotate and push down so that it seats. So that is how your flipper switch works. Well, as you can see, we're getting rid of the parts that were on the table from the exploded situation, if you will. The 2 corresponding yoke springs going next. You want to take a paper towel at this point, kind of curl it up, roll it up, if you will. Run that through your anti-reverse clutch. Anti-reverse clutches should run dry, and if there's any grease in there, it will inhibit its performance. We can put this case back on now. Typically, the issue you run into with the case, you need to make sure you align the little stud here with the flipper switch hole, and you need to make sure that the pinion gear aligns with the burring hole. It's going to be tight. That's probably why this thing comes out more times than it doesn't with the whole assembly. But if you're aware of those 2 things, then the install going back on shouldn't be too difficult. Bring it down. I use a little pick to align that pinion gear. Just work it in. And we have a nice tight fit. I expected nothing less. Okay, go to your parts tray and get the 4 screws. I'm going to take these out one by one because I don't want to drop them around anywhere. your screwdriver. I'm going to alternate that, so I'm going to do one that'll come over on this side, then I don't have to use my fingers as a clamp any longer. Clamps and cramps. So that flipper switch, when it's in the off position, this acts as a normal bait casting reel. You will set it, and the mechanism I showed you before with that trip lever is going to push that thumb bar back up and engage the yoke. On the flipper switch, when you have the flipper switch on, it's going to allow you to keep that other piece in gear, if you will, and as soon as you release, it re-engages. Here's a little screw again. That's another reason why I keep this towel under me, not only to just kind of keep the dirt and debris off my table, but if a part falls, that white towel kind of helps me see. Alright, we're going to take this smaller screwdriver now, put this one in. Same thing, check this bearing, we didn't do that yet. Let's oil that. So I guess the lesson here is don't panic. If you're working on a reel like this and something starts to go south on you like that, it all came apart in the case, just take your time, and there's a way to work around that. Alright, bearing goes in. Now we remember we had that lined up here, right? We said the reverse order of the way that it came off. And the next piece up then would be the washer that's the bearing shield. Bearing shield goes on. Then I didn't put those out in sequence, but I did note that we have the cup with that noisemaker. That's going to let you know that you're tightening or loosening your star adjuster. And then we have a couple of these tension washers, 2 of them. Those go in next. They're curved. So I tend to put the curved side facing up on the first and down on the second. That's generally the way that they come from the factory. And you can vary these depending on the sensitivity that you want on that star adjuster. That's what that's there for. I'm going to take the star adjuster now, but before we do, I'm going to do a quick wipe off there. I probably have transferred some grease onto the case. And not sure how you feel about the bright neon colors of the case. I kind of like them. Alright, you want to make sure as you're doing this that that little stud that's on that noisemaker gets inside the cup here. If it's hanging outside, you're going to compress it, probably ruin it. Okay, I'm just going to take a moment here, put the handle on, use the handle as a wrench. Now you can hear the noisemaker. So those drag washers or Carbon-Tex washers, they do not need lubrication. You can, if you like, put a thin coating of grease on those and then wipe them off. Carbon-Tex washers are non-permeable, they do not absorb. And the idea behind greases on drag washers is to take the ones that are permeable and make sure that they stay flexible and do not dry out and crack. We've put the little tension washer that goes there, and we take our handle and the handle nut. This is one that people mess up a lot, and if you're not diligent about it, you can cross thread that. So make sure that you can put that handle nut on by hand. Then of course you can tighten that down, but you don't want to risk cross stripping that. Now there's 2 ways that that cap usually fits. One is if the point on the nut is pointing right at that hole. The second is if you have a flat spot, if you're dead center in that flat spot with that hole, generally that will line it up as well. Let's see how we did here. Oh, I missed by a little bit, just the slightest amount. Of me and my eyesight. So it's an iterative process. Just do it until you align the hole. Should have it this time. Well, if you have any questions on this reel, or any reel, just leave them in the comment section. I will try to answer those for you, and I'll do my best to either provide you additional information you may be seeking, point you to somebody who might know that information that you're seeking, or just plain out tell you I don't know, in which case, well, I'll leave you to the internet to do a little bit more research there in terms of what to find out. All right, everything on the gear side's done. The worm gear is done. The pawl is done. We've kind of locked up the twine on this. The line is a braided line. It's very fine. And we can oil the bearing that goes on this side of the spool. There is no bearing on the other side. That was in the case, and we oiled that earlier. And now when you insert the spool, make sure that you don't trap the line in the side plate. As I mentioned, that's a common problem if you're leaving that line loose on there. Of course, what I recommend doing if you're servicing the reel, I like to say line's pretty inexpensive. The best thing to go do if you're servicing a reel like this is replace the line at the same time. Now, of course, this is a right-hand drive reel. There's both the left and the right-hand side varieties. If you have the left-hand side variety, left-hand crank variety, then you would reverse mirror image this. Set it there, a little bit of a turn. You might have to pull that switch back out. Oh, there we go. And then make sure that that switch sits in there. Okay, I'm going to stop this for a moment, take the glove off, we'll do a final test. Gloves off, the tools are pretty much away. And let's just recall what we did. We took it off. We showed you that there's really some issues with this reel and the removal of that plate, but don't panic. You remove your side plate first, you remove your spool, you come over and do the gear plate. It had the 3 screws on this side, had that one tiny screw hiding on the back side. We mentioned that on occasion this pinion gear gets stuck in that side plate, and while it pulls it apart, and you saw the results of one that did get stuck right here, it pulled it apart, the springs came out, some of the other things. Don't panic. If you don't know the reel, go to the schematic and check out the orientation of those pieces and parts that fell out. You'll be able to re-get it, get it back together again and all. But we showed you how to do just that. We inspected, we cleaned, we oiled, we lubricated, we put it all back together again. So what's left? A test. Remember what we said, we had this in the flipper mode. So right now you should see that the flipper is running, right? So we said that that's going to be an instant re-engagement when you're in flip mode. We showed you how to set that so that you can put it into the off mode by simply pulling up on that switch. Now you'll have a traditional bait casting reel where the spool will spin freely until you turn the handle. We showed you how that handle turn will trip the lever, and there you go. It just tripped the lever and you're back in gear. We showed you how to set the drag washers. So let's make sure that they're holding. They're holding. So now what you want to do is you want to release the pressure on those drag washers. That's a good one for storage. It helps prolong the life of the drags. And if you're using a permeable drag that we talked about earlier, well, that permeable drag, you're going to squeeze all the grease out of it if you leave it engaged like that. This is a spool adjuster. You want to make sure that you adjust it to the weight of your lure. Tightening it is clockwise, loosening it is counterclockwise. When you go to adjust your lure, you should be able to hold your pole out at mid-waist, allow the line to spool out, and if it hits the dock or the floor or the ground below you without bird's nesting, you have it set properly for casting. Okay, so that's it. Let's just give it a spin. It turns nice and free and easy. It's got a lot of life left in it. It's ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. It's been quite an experience, and things don't always go boilerplate, but sometimes the best education is in showing you what happens when something doesn't go according to plan. This is the Accurist S3 by Quantum. and that's your mag adjuster if we forgot to mention that. And well, that's how you take it apart, service it, keep it fishing for a long time to come. Before I leave, I want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, EMTs, everybody that's been watching. I appreciate the support of your channel, and I appreciate what the first responders do for us. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.